Hello, I'm Schwaller. I'm the Chief Executive of Keighley Voluntary Services, as was, and it's now Keighley and Ilkley Voluntary and Community Action. And my job is to manage and develop the organisation and also to lead on the development of the Central Hall project. We got involved in asset transfer when Central Hall closed in 2003 and I suggested to Youth Services that we start working on an idea that KIVKA, or KVS as it was then, could possibly take on the building and restore it and then run it. We had already had this dream, been developing the dream to develop Central Hall, to bring it back to life as a community resource, which it had been for many years, when it closed down in 2003. And then we went ahead with doing feasibility studies on the building to see if there was any future in developing it and whether we could actually sustain it ourselves. We thought actually it wasn't going to get anywhere because we couldn't get enough money to get it started, because it was going to be need at least £1 million just to lever other funding. And then along came the Community Assets Fund and we were project ready. We had the ideas, we had the feasibility studies done, so we had the arguments and much of the thinking done when the Assets Fund came along. The fundraising strategy included a mixture of capital towards the overall building costs and also costs for actually furnishing the building. There is an obligation to raise £145,000 more or less towards the capital costs of the building, and we've gone to a number of different sources to raise funds successfully for that, from REN for example, and also from a couple of smaller trusts and Kelly Foundation and so on. So we've raised most of that money, but we're also selling the building that we own now, and that capital will go towards the hole in the, in the budget, if you like. We've decided on the services as a result of a number of things, and inevitably it's going to be very difficult to actually be all things to all people, as somebody once said. So what we're doing is concentrating on the vision of the building, which is based on the premise of health, wealth, learning and equality for all, and that everything that goes on in the building is underpinned by that strapline, that mission statement. People have told us through surveys of our own members and service users, basically they want KIVKA to continue, to try and to respond to an expressed need for a bigger venue, for older people's groups to have events, for people to have training, conferences and so on. So that in itself is a very practical solution that has been achieved. And then of course there's the office space that we're offering as well. In a way, that the venue management, if you like, is a really major contribution to the Keighley town, outside our own need to provide more accessible services in a better environment. The business plan has been a constantly evolving item where we say, well, if we charge that much, we'll get this much. But having decided on the charges finally, that gives us a better foundation for guessing the sort of income that we'll make. One of the challenges around this is that we want to make sure that the building is sustainable and attractive also to business and social enterprise and the corporate sector. But at the same time, we'll be offering support to organisations who haven't got much income or any at all on how to find the funding to pay Central Hall to house them. Because we think it's an important ethos to develop. We want them to enjoy being in a new environment which is more suitable for them, and also to encourage them to move towards income generation for themselves. Our approach to social enterprise is very much underpinned by the building itself, which we will have to run as a social enterprise. I mean, there doesn't seem to be any question of it in my mind. And that has helped us to think of ourselves in a more enterprising way. And KIVKA's future and our need to become more self-sustaining is heavily linked to Central Hall, but actually Central Hall in itself is a social enterprise. We've got to balance our need to be sustainable with at the same time not undermining other successful initiatives around, but to draw them in if we can and work with them for the benefits of Central Hall. Most important is to get Central Hall running self-sustainably first, before we think about what impact that will have on KIVKA. So we've got ideas about all sorts of enterprising activities that can go on in the building. Because we've got a lot of experience and expertise either ourselves or with other partners, other colleagues, other organisations. It will be a focal point for training and learning of anything from a small organisation in the voluntary sector to a small business to a large business, if the market is there, and theoretically it is. So we've got masses of ideas, but the marketplace out there is very vulnerable. The relationships with the council, well, initially they were with youth services because that's where the first ideas were developed very early on. And then very quickly asset management came into the scene and regeneration department as well. They were the main departments that we worked with for a long time, and absolutely invaluable support from the Development Trust Association in terms of helping with the early thinking. And then we began to draw in some interest from the private sector, which we hadn't had in any kind of way before. The important thing about the private sector relationship for me is not just the possibility of organisations, businesses using the building, but it's about developing that relationship between the private sector, the public sector and the third sector. And I think that what I really hope is that Central Hall will become a catalyst for that. Having the building will make a big difference to KIVKA's ability to respond to what its users and members are saying it needs to do. It also gives us an opportunity to develop a social enterprise, which might help to keep us going in the future as an organisation. But more importantly, as I've said on many occasions, this was primarily, fundamentally, about creating something or bringing something back to life for the local community. I'd like to feel that local people and local communities have a sense of ownership of it, so that the place has got volunteers running it, doing things, maybe alongside paid staff, but that there's a sense that people want to put their time and their energy into making it happen and to work well. I'd like to think that there's a buzz in there with lots of different activities going on, that it's a place where people know they can come for reliable, up-to-date information. We're taken as a serious partner, we the building, is taken as a serious partner in that whole business of how Keighley town operates. So I almost want to sort of fast forward now to June next year. I just can't wait. I'm counting the days to what it's going to be like actually being in the building and showing people around.